polka dot.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas.
Puppet on Reddit said the sky was not the limit. He'd fly to the moon in a nanosecond. But we haven't been back since 1972. Destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew.
Okay, thanks for joining.
Except for the
This is December the 5th, 2019. Mandela Apocalypse Eve. Yes, the movie The Mandela Effect, or The MANDOOZLED Effect, comes out tomorrow. Well, rather at midnight. And so my theory on this whole thing has been, well, if the Mandela Effect is real, and all it takes is being exposed to the discrepancies to show that you're transdimensional, which is a protected status, by the way. If you're transdimensional, you get all the protections that all of our trans friends get. It's protected status. In fact, it's MAMDOOZLED, according to Richie from Boston, who actually has experienced it himself. Let's take a look really quick. I want to play this for you. Richie from Boston has been talking about the MANDOOZLED effect, and I want to get this out first and foremost, because it's important. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Richie from Boston is Mandela affected. Now, look, one other thing. He cites his age. He says he's 56. So that's supposed to make you think that, you know, his memory is like more reliable than yours or something, but I think he has that backwards. But I do think that since the Mandela effect movie is coming out, if it's real, then it's going to expose a lot of people to it who have not been exposed to it. And the theme of the movie, based on the trailer, is ideas are dangerous things. Ideas are dangerous things. So maybe this is some kind of social experiment run by, the intelligence agencies, where they flood the zone, the whole truther community, with this phenomenon that gets you diagnosable and gives you your 5150 status. And listen to Richie from Boston jumping on the MANDOOZLED bandwagon. Now again, this is in his own words. Let me see if I can get the volume up for you.
Other dimensions
Here we go.
that they're tapping into.
I know it's low, but again, he starts off with the other dimensions. Let me see if I can get the volume up a little bit higher for you. Okay, there you go.
Millions of alternate realities. Other dimensions that they're tapping into. Now I tend to believe that completely because at 52 years old, I remember Kennedy getting shot.
At 52 years old, I remember Kennedy getting shot. Like, what precisely do you mean when you say you remember Kennedy getting shot? Did you witness it firsthand? No. Did you see it on TV? No. Were you there? No. Was it even viewable when it happened? And the answer is no. No one has really formed an original memory of that event to be able to call out a discrepancy with any kind of certainty. But he goes on to say that he is certain that it only had 4 seats in the car.
I remember seeing the Zapruder film numerous times. The Zapruder film showed the entire event, for the most part. It was a driver, a senator, Jackie O, John F. Kennedy.
1, 2, 3, 4. Driver, Senator, Jackie O, John F. Kennedy. He knows for certain there were only 4 people in. Now, if you didn't know, we've already solved this one. And this one is pretty simple. Basically, the vehicle on display that the Mandela affected will say is evidence or residue of the Mandela effect, they'll say, well, it has 4 seats, but if you look at the actual Zapruder film today, it's actually a 6-seater. So they cite the vehicle as evidence. Well, it turns out the 2 middle seats are folded down, so it still has 6 seats. So that's a non-discrepancy, but that doesn't stop Richie from,
In this new reality,
in this new reality.
the car has 6 seats in it, and there's now 6 passengers.
So in this new reality, the car has 6 seats and 6 passengers. So the reality that we're in, according to Richie from Boston, the one that we're in right now, is not the same one that he was in when he first remembers the event. So he's trans-dimensional.
That's a Mandela effect worth noting.
That's a Mandela effect worth noting. Right. Another debunked Mandela effect, just like the one about Ed McMahon, but we'll continue.
Songs, candy bar wrappers, car emblems changing, I don't care about that. Historical events like JFK being sacrificed in front of a Freemasonic temple.
Historical events like JFK being sacrificed in front of a Freemasonic temple? Does he not know that Jimmy Carter is Take Two? Does he not know how actor-driven this whole charade is? And that's right, Thirst for Truth. They always mandoozle the magic bullet. The magic bullet theory, that whole area of conjecture, completely contradicts the 4-seater thing. So they're pretty screwed on this one. They're gradually waking up to it. But what I'm wondering is, what are we going to see tomorrow? Millions of Mandela affected going crazy, Mandela-ocalypse, or are we going to see a mass deconstruction of this thing, which we're pretty much starting that. Like our stated goal here has been deconstructing the psychological operations all around us, and one of them is being propped up by Richie here when he says JFK was ritually murdered in front of a Masonic temple. You see, what they do is they efface the role of the media in creating pseudo-news events by making it seem like the media is just recording what the bad guys did. No, that's not how it works. The whole thing is staged. So he's pushing a false flag theory, obviously, instead of the PSYOP, which is what non-agents do. Okay, a few more seconds of his mandoozlement.
Getting his head blown off from 5 different directions. That's big.
Getting his head blown off from 5 different directions. So that's just classic misdirection. At this point, it's kind of just lazy. Like, it's pretty obvious what happened. Now let's move on to the next hoax. This is a big one. So the space shuttle hoax has been, I think, exposed ad nauseum as basically a balloon. Not really a shuttle, but when it lands, it's not the same craft that you see supposedly being launched up into space. But they kind of shot themselves in the foot here with one particular shot having to do with the shuttle's booster. So you know it takes off and then it drops the boosters, and so you have what is posited to be a video from the window seat of the space shuttle, and they're looking down as the booster falls down to Earth. At least that's what you're supposed to believe is happening. Well, on closer inspection, what you're really seeing is a blimp painted up to look like a rocket booster, and before the camera moves this thing out of its view, like at the very end, right before it loses the shot of the blimp, you can actually see an airplane passing right by it. So what I'm suggesting here is that what we're actually seeing is a blimp which is being filmed from an aircraft, and that the airplane is part of the crew here that's wrangling this thing, and that this footage is just augmented onto the fake rocket launch. So let's go ahead and take a look here. And look, I'm going to show you what I did to the image just so you can get an idea. Okay, so basically I changed the contrast and I rotated it 90 degrees, and the footage that I'm talking about is actually on YouTube. You can search it. I'm not going to re-upload it. It's something that they have to defend. And so, wrong picture. Hold on a second. I mean, we kind of give them a pass with the space shuttle because we're so focused on the fakery with the ISS, but it's important not to neglect it because the ISS looks very realistic compared to some of the stuff they did with the space shuttle. When the space shuttle was still being used, there was still, I think, a whole lot of, it seemed, stop motion animation. Like they hadn't made the transition into CGI. They hadn't made the transition into augmented virtual reality. And they certainly hadn't perfected the harness systems. Now, the movie is going to be showing in Los Angeles if you're going to go see the Mandela Effect movie. But other than a few select theaters, it's mostly going to be video on demand. So I'm going to check Amazon. And if it's available at midnight, I'll check it out myself. And I'll do a critical review. And look, this is what I've always maintained about that always is that if it's real, then we live in a completely magical subjective universe. Okay, take a look. This is the booster, and this is the airplane that you'll see in the video. And this is important to point this out first. It's at 4 minutes and 56 seconds into the video, and there are many people who I've shown this to on float.app, and most of them are like, well, that's problematic, it's a blimp. But I had one person saying, you're just seeing what you want to see. And I'm like, nah, I changed the contrast, and that's an airplane. And you can see the cameraman trying to move and hide it at the last minute. So it's a 5-minute piece. Let me go ahead and mute it first. It's Endeavor's external tank. So this is said to be handheld camera footage captured by the crew. So we're supposed to believe that this was recorded by someone's, and we don't really see handheld cameras anymore either. Okay, and so look, when I first saw this, my very first impression was, oh, it looks like a balloon floating up into the sky. And I'm still not convinced that the cameraman is even moving. Like, I'm thinking this could easily be the cameraman on the ground zooming in on a balloon against a backdrop of clouds. Just the balloon is against the clouds, and they're saying, oh no, he's up above in space, orbiting. And so you're looking down at the top of clouds, at the tops of them. So it's an optical illusion. You can look at this in one of two ways. Either you are in low Earth orbit looking down, or you're on the ground looking up. And I'm saying that they play on this ambiguity here. And I kind of suspect that we're below this thing, but it could be either. But I'm telling you that this, to me, looks like a blimp. It looks like a blimp that's floating in the way that it moves. In no way does it look like a free-falling object or an object that's falling how fast? Okay, take a look. So, look, to me, this 100%, just right off the bat, this looks like he's in a shuttle on the ground, sitting in the cockpit, videotaping the sky, and the blimp goes by. And then he's going to zoom in, and the blimp moving, and this is going to be presented to you as, oh no, they're actually in orbit looking down on Earth. And I'm like, nah, this is an optical illusion. What's up, Speedster 12, Thirst for Truth, Lilith, Milky Smooth? Yes, we are live right now. We're about 14 minutes into a live stream. If you're on my Patreon list, you'll get the email notifications. There you go again. I'm telling you, that's a blimp. You can see it. I mean, where I live, we have the annual balloon fiesta. I've had balloons crash in neighborhoods near where I live, like last year. And this is a balloon above the cameraman who's on the ground in the space shuttle, which is parked on the ground. Like, he's recording it through the space shuttle's window, and you'll see he even makes a point to show you the edge of the window so you know that they're up there in space. But I'm saying no, this is a blimp that they're recording. Now check this out. This is the windowsill. This is the windowsill from the space shuttle. So again, they're telling you, oh yeah, we're up 200 miles above the Earth, and you're looking at the booster as it falls down to Earth. And it's still high up above the clouds. That's what they're having the viewer think. And I'm saying that no, you're actually looking up. You're looking up at a blimp that's beneath the clouds. And it's being videotaped through the window of the parked space shuttle. This is such an easy one to catch. And I've started looking into this idea more seriously, that a lot of their fakery involves recording the sky with the GoPro lens. And this seals it. This is not accidental. See, these are directed. Directors don't leave in shots that don't have a purpose. Every shot foreshadows the next. They only show you this so you know, oh yeah, they're up in the space shuttle. It's like, no, they're not. They're on the damn ground. And they're recording a blimp in the sky, and they're saying, oh yeah, that's our booster falling down to Earth. So let me go ahead and play like 30 seconds of it. This is hilariously done. It's just so bad.
And we got it. Looks great. Thanks.
Window from downlink video has opened up again, and so now we're seeing some more of that video of the external tank shot by Mike Fink after Endeavour's orbit.
See, if he had gone a little too far to the right, you probably would have seen like the Manhattan or the Houston skyline or something. Like, this is so bad. This is clever, but it's bad. Like, this is really corny.
Mike Fink after Endeavour's orbit earlier this morning.
Okay, here's where they reinforce, oh yeah, we're in space. It's like, no, they're not. Now watch, they zoom in. Clearly, you're looking at a blimp drifting beneath the clouds. Again, this is done beneath the clouds. Carrot Juice says, 90% of the masses may figure out NASA's a money grab. Now what? What do we do now? I don't really think it's about NASA. I mean, NASA provides one aspect to it, but it's way bigger. And what do? Opt out of the trips to Mars, even if they're free. That's about it. I may even get into the CubeSat business. Kickstart something. Okay, again, look at this balloon. Look, no one knows better how to fake this stuff than us at this point, so why not?
Okay, Matt, go ahead.
All right. One thing is, in your pre-sleep...
Now, look how fast the clouds are moving. So, if you're going to believe the illusion, let's say you're just thoroughly sold on this thing, and that I'm wrong or I'm crazy, okay? Look how fast the clouds are moving. And then tell me again how fast they're orbiting, because the space station goes 17,000 miles per hour, and we all have a pretty good idea of how those clouds kind of crawl.
Matt, go ahead.
All right. One thing is, in your pre-sleep config, page 3-4, step 6, lists a few things to check the power off on. For your TV monitor power control unit, we would like you to leave that on overnight. How copy?
Crimson King, you're right. Your eyes are not deceiving you. You're looking at a blimp floating in the sky, being recorded from the ground. It is not falling through space. And look at these contortions it makes.
We're not sure. You may or may not have a maneuver control from the ground this evening.
Okay, Matt.
Now, earlier today I was parsing through it frame by frame, and I actually caught a bird.
Now, apparently we might do that. We're not really sure. So you might be maneuvering this evening while you're sleeping. We can control that from the ground.
So I'll provide timestamps for everything, but I did find a bird. But I want to show you the main thing. The bird kills it for me. And it's definitely like a big fat pigeon. And there are no pigeons in suborbital heights like that I know of. Like, do pigeons go into low Earth orbit? Look, there it is. 1 minute and 43 seconds. Look, up here. It's a bird. It's literally a freaking bird. So, what's more likely? This is a balloon or we have birds in orbit? How high up is that bird? How did it not get cooked? It should be a roast. Like it should just be burnt to a crisp at this height. But watch. There he goes, flapping his wings. That is a bird. Speedster says, so we aren't live. Yep, this is a live stream. Don't worry about it. We're live on multiple platforms. All the chat modules go into one place, so wherever you're at, go ahead and comment. Carrot Juice, I'm not sure what you mean by next step. You know, I don't think that there's really any changing. Like look, for example, logically, you can disprove God. You know, has that changed anything? Has it changed the trajectory of religion? No, it hasn't. Okay, somebody said skip to 333. Yeah, it gets really corny. Watch this. That's definitely 100% a balloon. And what is that up there? Okay, there's some funny business going on. This is a great piece. We're looking at a balloon, probably above White Sands, New Mexico. Look at those poofy clouds. These are not the tops of clouds. These are the bottoms of clouds. What is that? Is that some type of a parachute? What is it? I'm not sure what that is, but that's kind of what it looks like. Okay, it looks like a parachute, which makes perfect sense. Okay, I got it. Here's what they're doing. This thing has a parachute. And what happens is, and this is like, it's called a, actually, I'll go over that next. Let me go ahead and just preface this with this. Something I was looking into today has to do with how do you recover balloon-borne satellites? How do you recover balloon-borne satellites? Well, it turns out that there's a procedure for it, and I found a number of good documentaries, but one of them is called the Genetrix program. And I found this on stratocat.com, the balloon encyclopedia, and it talks about how they recover balloon-borne satellites, balloon-borne cameras. Whatever it is that's going on high altitude, there is a procedure for recovering these things, and recovering them can involve a plane going by and using a big hook and just basically snagging it. So check this out. This is Genetrix. It says a code name of a program carried out in 1956 in secret by the United States Secret Air Command and other agencies doing reconnaissance of USSR and its satellites. The balloons would drift across the Soviet Union on a winter jet stream covering all the Soviet landmass. Once outside Russian airspace, the gondolas would be cut free of the balloons by radio signals while descending in parachutes. They would be then caught in midair by specially prepared planes. So this was in the 50s. So basically, you send a spy satellite on a balloon. Radio command has the balloon detach itself, and the thing falls, and then the parachuting spy satellite is then snagged by an airplane. And so going back to my post on the topic and to the video, what you're seeing here at 333, and this I'm telling you, this debunks the space program. So deal with it. You actually see the parachute deploy, and the cameraman moves cleverly so you don't see it, but I can see the parachute right here. And then what's more, this is interesting. So I'm not sure what this is, how they're pulling this off, except for this. This is what seals it for me. Take a look on the right, and I don't know if I can adjust the contrast live, but that's why I was showing you this picture here. What you see on the right, moving into the screen, is this. It's the recovery plane. It's the specially equipped plane that goes by to snag it. So, not quite sure what this thing is, how it works. Is it a blimp? Is it a falling object that's then going to be parachuted? I mean, to me, it looks most likely to be a blimp of some kind. But as you'll see here, what I can tell you for certain 100%, because we're trying to reverse engineer this, is that this is undoubtedly not being recorded from the space shuttle. And watch the airplane come by. and I'll have the airplane go by a few times. There it is. See, the plane is actually speeding to catch up to it. So let me go ahead and slow it down to playback speed of 0.25. And so I'm going to 4 minutes and 50 seconds. You're going to see the airplane, the small jet, come from the right, and the cameraman's going to move. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. And they've adjusted the contrast. Here it is. Here's your airplane on the top right, and watch it come into view and then go right below this thing. And it's got to be close. We're not talking about something that's miles away. It's in the vicinity. So I think it might be somehow snatching this thing. It may have a hook. There may be a parachute situation. I'm not quite sure, but he moves the camera so you can't see it. Advanced camo tech. Could be. It could be reflective paint. I mean, who knows what they do. But basically, this canister is dropped. They're recording it. I think it's a blimp. I'm not sure if it has a parachute or not. I think it does, or it has some type of something deploys out of it at 3 minutes and 33 seconds. Definitely some type of a flag, maybe. It may not even be a parachute. It may be a long, I guess, some type of a trailing flag, like a fabric or something with cables, something. And that's what the jet comes in. I guess its signal is when the flag gets pulled, and the jet comes in ostensibly to snatch it with a hook. So this is again Endeavor. So I'm suggesting that this is a case closed. There's really nothing you can say to really efface how big of a deal this is. And you would have no way to explain this airplane or its presence right there. No way at all. By the way, if you go to infiniteplaneradio.com, you'll see the live stream option, and it'll give you all of the different places you can go to watch it. I'm no longer going to send people to any particular one. It's just whatever you feel like. We're integrating it, so it doesn't make a huge difference. But I'm showing you here, look, the technology exists. This is the procedure. It says here, the gondolas would be cut free of the balloons by radio signals, and while descending in parachute, they would be caught midair from specially equipped planes. So this was a program that's been used for decades. So what we saw there, I think, was pretty clear. So again, if you go to the video, and you can find this at autohoax.com, at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you'll see something deploy out of it. At the 1 minute and 30 second mark to 140, you'll see the bird if you care to. And then at 4:56, till the end of the video when they cut the feed, you'll see the airplane snatching it up. Marty Moose, it's supposed to be a deploy parachute. Well, the problem I have with this is the way it's floating around. So it's supposed to be a deployed parachute. Interesting. But look at this. I'd like to know what speed they're suggesting this thing is actually going as well. Anyway, phones are open 505-510-4226. Handheld from Shuttles Endeavor. I think the blimp stuff was pretty obvious at that point. I think it's just floating. That is not, there's no other way of putting it. And hey, the other day I called it out that Greta was pretty much, because she said it herself, she arrives, she arrives home on a boat, and she says it just wouldn't be possible for everybody to travel by boat across the Pacific. And I thought, you know what? I think she's realizing, or maybe she inadvertently admitted how privileged she actually is. And this meme pops up today. If you remember her speech, you have stolen my dreams and my childhood starter pack. And what they have here, 8,000-pound chair by Vitra Ames. Another egg chair, 9,450 pounds. And you have these classical guitars in the back. And it's just kind of this, it's just like, obviously, most of these activists, if not all of them, come from a place of privilege. Most agitators, by the way, are pretty much the progeny of oligarchs, like billionaires' children running gun control drills. This is terrible, but I'm going to have to play it. This is probably the worst astronaut ever. And all he does is he talks as though he's always communicating to 2-year-olds. Like he uses baby talk. This is an astronaut engaging in baby talk in the strangest way, and I can't help but notice, just because I'm visually literate, I can't help but notice how fake this looks. And there are a number of scenes in here worth examining, but this is the character I wanted to focus on. He talks about how fun it is to eat in space. He's always playing with his food. Strangest mannerisms. I don't understand. But if you can't tell that this guy is against a green screen, then I can't help you. Like, this is two-dimensional. This is flat. Okay, now listen to this guy talk at a second grade level.
Space, I get to make balls out of it. So check this out. And then suck the...
Yeah, oh yeah, this is where he's talking about his favorite foods.
Well, I like eating pretty much everything in here because I can play with my food. But my favorite is coffee.
I can play with my food? This is an astronaut, and he plays with his food? Like, I'm like, okay, well, this guy's probably not doing too well mentally. Can you send him back down?
Coffee balls. So I'll show you about a coffee ball. So coffee, I love coffee on Earth. It's pretty much my favorite thing. But in space, I get to make balls out of it. So check this out. And then suck the balls. Suck the balls. Suck the balls. Suck the balls.
Now again, keeping in mind that you know this to be fake, knowing this is fake, I mean, you know this guy's in front of a green screen. You know, I mean, if you have any degree of sophistication when it comes to video editing software and where we're at in terms of graphics, this is not video. This is a guy on a stage with a green screen. I mean, can anyone here tell me that they actually find this convincing? You can see the edges of him. Why look here on the top right. I'm sorry, look on the top left of your screen. See where his shoulder is glowing? It looks to me like chroma key.
That one got away from me. But as you can see, it's pretty fun to play with balls.
Yeah, and there's more. Look, these people are so goofy. There's just so much nonsense going on up there. And I'm saying the level of communication doesn't make any sense. It's so dumbed down. And look, even if you want to pretend this is real, it makes me wonder, where's the real science? But listen to this clown.
Bones and muscles from atrophying or losing part of our bones. And then we have just science and we fix things. Science and we fix things. Science and we fix things. And we keep stuff clean and running and change out parts. So we're just very busy. The biggest part of our day is science, 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 science. So we do almost 300 experiments over my 6-month mission we'll be involved in. And so we just keep very busy, and all of it's fun. So we do...
And all of it's fun. And look at his facial expressions, his intonations. Like, who is he talking to? This is not how an adult should be talking.
We do almost...
He's basically babbling like a child. He looks stoned, I have to say. But look at these facial expressions. This is so darn goofy. Like, what is he? Pee Wee Herman? Okay, anyway, let's move on. Just another government jester. People believe this is real. Where'd they find this guy? Gas station? Yeah, I don't know. I kind of think that was some kind of a hazing where he has to talk about how much he loves doing that to the coffee balls. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then I'm looking at this show over here. This is where I'm like, okay, so he's supposed to be floating in space. A few things wrong with this scene here. There's a lot wrong with this scene. I don't know if I want to deal with this one. You have Trump and his daughter and a female astronaut. Then we have this scene where 3 astronauts are literally mandoozled. Look at this. Okay, so then let's move on. What do you call this? Congrats, Peggy. So this is Peggy. One thing about Peggy is she had gray hair and sunken cheeks and full eyebrows before she got on the space station for her 666-day ride. This is the one who's always talking about how enthusiastic she is about drinking recycled Russian urine. Well, Peggy got Botox injections and hair dye in space and plucked her eyebrows. A lot of cosmetics go into this one. And the only reason I find this noteworthy is who's sending the makeup up there? You know, how does hairspray work in space? She's obviously wearing hairspray. They're using cosmetics. And then, of course, the Botox, problematic. The hair dye, problematic. But, okay, now look at the weird angle of his hips. Looking again at this guy from the gas station that they hired to pretend to be an astronaut. Look at his weird, awkward angle. Like, is he not supporting his own weight? Can you not tell that he's supporting his weight with his obliques on his side? So why does he need to use his muscles to hold himself up if he's going to sit sideways? I thought that he was in microgravity. I thought he was just floating. But you can see he's actually straining to hold himself. He can't do it.
College and graduate.
Because there's gravity in the room, or whatever you want to call it. They're using harnesses. He's dangling. He is dangling from a string.
When I started working at Rice, that's what made it possible, I think, to. Well, a typical day, we wake up and look at the messages from the ground, big activities that we do. Plus, you know, we have over 200 investigations on things that we're used to on the ground. Still on.
Well, you know, I everything here, my dad always said that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It's not really work. It's just fun. It's like playing Fort almost, only you're...
It's not even work. It's just fun. It's like playing Fort. Like, why is playing Fort in his frame of reference? How old is this guy?
Changing the world while you do it. And then on the off time... the other morning, I was working out and on our machine, making a difference on the ground and for the future of humanity as well. So it's an incredible job.
You're making a great difference, I have to say. Do you think that students should be focusing, or should they be thinking about other subjects? What do you think are the opportunities for young students wanting to be involved in space?
Sir, absolutely. I think...
Search flag.
Okay, so anyway, this is a video by System of Control. Just a lot of weird antics. Like, even if you want to pretend like it's real and not just call
channels
it,
we have...
I mean, I know what this is, but just pretending it to be real. Let's just assume it's real just for the sake of argument. They're still behaving in very peculiar ways, and it makes me wonder if maybe micro G isn't all that good for the brain. And what's this here on the wall? It looks like on the left side they have what looks to be a script. Like there's actually like a script taped to the wall there. Maybe those are the questions they're responding to. That's peculiar. And how come those don't flop around? if these are just pieces of paper hanging tacked to the wall when the women's hair flops around. A Call Day 2323 says, good old government propaganda. Yeah, that's all this is. And that's what we get kicked off of YouTube for criticizing. For accurately describing it. The Great Escape, Why Alternate Reality Movies Are Making a Comeback. Okay, this is a piece that talks about the Mandela effect. So, how many of you in chat are thinking that the Mandela effect is going to cause a lot of people to be affected, or rather, it'll cause them to find out that we're all affected? How many more affectees are going to come out of this? We could have 1 million Mandela affected just by tomorrow that weren't here today. This could be it. This could be the Great Awakening. This could be the Great Mandoozlement. And I was told this was going to happen. In fact, let me go ahead and get that little soundbite. A couple of things here. Okay, so I have a couple of things to bring up. There was someone who wants to debate with me on the topic of the Mandela effect, which, interesting, I mean, is it something that you debate? Because if there's no evidence for it, can it be debated? That would be my question. But is anyone here? Okay, see, Leroy says it's a waste of time. Yeah, the kids asking the questions, they ask questions at like a 3rd grade level or lower. Eternal says, I think it's caused by Google's meddling in quantum computing and maybe CERN, right? That's what it's supposed to be, CERN. That's an interesting point there because that's the only logical explanation. If you want to stick with, the accepted scientific paradigm or pseudoscientific paradigm. And the trouble with that is it is pretty much based on, standard globe science. Like, in other words, the flat earthers who have jumped on the Mandela effect bandwagon are going to be left with a little bit of a conundrum here. Like, how do you have a flat stationary plane while at the same time, how are you also treating modern quantum physics and this modern concept of astrophysics, which are, presupposing that we're in a heliocentric system and that gravity exists? The Mandela effect is pretty much an effect of, it's an effect that can be explained by conventional science, but flat earth denial of conventional science or pseudoscience doesn't leave room for this. Logic also would kind of get in the way. Miles Mathis did a piece on the London Bridge hoax. I think we should look at this really quick as well. Okay, Hillary Clinton. 2 hours after we kicked off our Flat Earthers for Hillary Clinton Facebook group, just 2 hours afterward, she actually dropped a hint that said she's thinking about running, and she dropped it on Howard Stern. So yeah, she's going to run. Putting a link below. We need to get enough of us so that we can get some interviews and we can kind of shift the typical narrative of basically conspiracy theorists are all on the right. It's like, no, let's not let them polarize it. Let's get some climate change denying flat earthers to support Hillary Clinton very vocally. So we need about 40,000 of you. This is where it's at, says, I'm not down with Mandela. Well, the movie comes out. And so the people who believe in it have to take it seriously. Richie from Boston believes in it. Now, I don't know if he's ever heard of the misinformation effect. Marty Moose says, the Mandoozled caller you had a couple weeks ago had me worried about these guys. He's really convinced. No, a lot of them are. And here's the worst case scenario, in my point of view. The worst case scenario is that this was an operation from the beginning to plant double binds, which are unresolvable dilemmas in the mind of the affected. And enough of these unsolvable dilemmas that have this sense of paranoia attached to them can actually break somebody, at least make them diagnosable. And what will happen is usually it's their delusions cause them to alienate from their family. This is facilitated by the internet and by the echo chamber. Well, you know what? Your internet echo chamber is not going to be there when your family sends you to the mental hospital because you're having a mental breakdown over the spelling of Fruit Loops. And I think that might be the worst case scenario, that Big Brother engineered this thing to take down a lot of people who were deconstructing the news. Not just attacking your integrity as a perceiver, but maybe even part of the broader agenda of, 5150, let's put the conspiracy theorists / domestic terrorists in the asylum to Gitmo with the Mandela affected. That's where they're at. I mean, you thought climate change denial was bad, and then you got the globe denying flat earthers. You thought that was bad. Well, now they got to deal with reality deniers. And I don't think they can have that. Eternally English says, hilariously, what about the Bible passage about the lion and the lamb? It's changed to the wolf and the lamb, and people can't explain that. The Bible is one of the most changed and edited and re-edited and reinterpreted books in the entire world. And you're going to say the Bible changed. That's proof. Give me a break. Anyway, if you're a shepherd, what's more likely? Are you going to be, the boy who cried wolf, he wasn't crying lion. I don't think the lion thing even makes sense. I think you're conflating it with another Bible verse, which isn't all that far-fetched. What's more likely? Okay, what's more likely? That somebody mixed up a couple Bible verses, which is just a huge book of interchangeable gibberish, or that the universe shifted and that the reality changed and now, come on. You got to take out your Occam's razor. And your Hitchens razor is even better in this instance, which says extraordinary claims with no evidence can be dismissed with no evidence. I don't need evidence to say that you're full of baloney. And something else too. The Mandela affected care more about this trivial information because they think it's meaningful than about the actual information that we can actually analyze, like the stuff right in front of us. This is real serious analysis, what we're trying to do. Check this out. London's entry for the stupidest story of the year just in time for Black Friday. Just in time for Black Friday. Remember, I called it in advance. We said, hey, Black Friday, we're going to have our annual PSYOP. It's going to be an Allah Akbar. Let's see where it hits. And there you go, London. And this was the story about the guy on the bridge, and he was fought against by a couple of heroes. One of them had a fire extinguisher. Another one had a whale tusk. Just as dumb as the story that happened, I think it was in Melbourne or Sydney or something, where the guy with the knife was attacked or was repelled by somebody with a milk crate. After Usman Khan stabbed several people, he was controlled by a guy with a narwhal tusk and a guy with a fire extinguisher, and a convicted murderer named Jim Ford. And this is from Miles Mathis. He says, who's writing this? Monty Python? These MI6 guys must be bored. Oh yeah, look, I think these guys wrote the Mandela effect, and they threw in the Fruit Loops thing so that you could have a breakdown over Fruit Loops, which is kind of a slang term for someone who's crazy. Look, this is so ridiculous. There's this new Mandela effect. I've been following these. There's new ones. The new one is, does Frosty the Snowman have a scarf? And they have a big breakdown over this. Yes, he did have a scarf. No, he didn't. Well, it depends on which picture. Sometimes he has a scarf, sometimes he doesn't. Scarf is a clothing item that you might not always be pictured with. Maybe not in the cartoon. But I want to show you this. Because I heard a Mandela affected channel saying that the moon used to have a human face on it until 1913. Commenter says, you can learn stuff from people who don't hold your same beliefs. Thank you, that's very profound. So this is an image of the moon from 1880. They've diagrammed it. This is really down to the crater. Every feature annotated here. 1880. So I have people saying, oh, it's a Mandela effect. The moon used to have a man on it, like man on the moon. It had a human face on it, and now the face has died and it's like a skull. Right? So I'm hearing this and I'm like, wait. Don't you think somebody would have noticed it? Wouldn't someone have noticed it? I mean, come on. 1880. This happened. So I think they're looking at the Jules Verne movie. And then one of the Mandela affected says that she, quote, remembers when there was a man on the moon and it changed. And the other guy says, oh, well, it works that way. It changes at different times for different people. So we're all in our own subjective universe and we're just kind of overlapping. I mean, come on. Oh, look, Owen Benjamin, far-right commentator, suspended from YouTube, daily.com. You see, I'm tired of being associated with far-right types like Alex Jones and Owen Benjamin, so I'm saying, hey, let's get behind Hillary Clinton. So they changed the moon. No, they didn't change the moon. Like, nothing's changed. The Mandela effect is definitely a psychological operation, and I'm just curious to see what's going to come out of it over the next 24 hours. Will there be a Mandela apocalypse? So if you're affected, in fact, Maddie, look, there's a liar out there by the name of Maddie who called in before, and he attempted to debate the existence of this phenomenon as, evidence, that reality is in fact shifting and this is the norm. He was very passionate about it, but he was making arguments from what he called the collective memory. Well, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as collective memory. That's not a good argument. He's like, oh, 100,000 people can't be wrong. 100,000 people can't be wrong. What about the millions who remember it the other way? So I'm listening to this, and anyway, he basically, on this Mandela Effect channel, he says that he wants to debate me over this. But he claims that I blocked all his phone numbers. And I could show you right now on my Google phones that there are no blocked numbers. So I'm curious as to why he would say that, unless it's just like bait or something. But my point is, he wants to debate the existence of the Mandela effect, which is really interesting. Because they don't agree. Like, very few people who are Mandela affected believe that Nelson Mandela is a real strong one. And moreover, when they're proven wrong, what they started doing is they started moving the goalpost. So now they say, oh no, your video evidence of Ed McMahon working for AFP doesn't prove me wrong. It just proves that they downloaded these into the new reality that you're in. You see how that works? This collective memory notion and the idea also contains this idea that when they change something in the past, they might have to add some stuff. And I say they, who's they? I don't know. Nor do they. It's a bandwagon that's really fascinating to watch because I think it's designed to crash. Like, I think it's designed to send people into an asylum. And I think it's targeted at attaching itself, kind of like the anti-vax extremists got attached to the flat earth concept. How did that happen? And no, the memory is not perfect. And that was another point of it. He's saying, you're attacking memory. I'm not attacking memory. I'm pointing it out. That it's a well-known and established fact that your memory isn't perfect. And that your memory can be influenced. It can be highly suggestible. I have a video clip I was showing the other day where I think she was a psychologist, had done this study where she asked a group of people, do you remember Bugs Bunny at Disneyland? And of course, Bugs Bunny's Warner Brothers, so he wouldn't be at Disneyland. He would be shot on site. But before they were asked the question, they were shown an advertisement for Disneyland that had Bugs Bunny. And she said to, varying degrees, they all had stories about how they met Bugs Bunny at Disneyland. Just like we got some people who say that they watched some movie about Sinbad being a genie. Carrot Juice says Owen Benjamin is on some CIA op. I don't know. I thought so at the beginning. I thought so because it's just convenient that you're going to come out and say all the things that will offend enough people to justify cracking down on free speech. It seems like he's an agent provocateur, if anything. This is where it's at. Says the older you get, the more stuff you forget. Well, Richie from Boston says he's 56 and he remembers that JFK got shot 5 times in the head from 5 different directions in front of a Masonic temple. Like, he remembers that. And he remembers that there were only 4 seats. Okay, so this is a movie review by The Guardian. It says The Great Escape: Why Alternate Reality Movies Are Making a Comeback. And this is interesting too. We've got this kind of confluence of all these characters just popping up, like Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. And I do think this thing is very engineered. Last month, the Drudge Report had a story about Chick-fil-A, and they used the Mandela affected logo, the one without the K. Marty Moose says, compare a picture of the moon from 1950 to today, and I guarantee if it's the same as long as it's in the same phase. Well, look, we have maps, but again, you can't argue with people who aren't willing to hold up to reason and logic. Okay, listen to this. With so many films peddling the scenario that the narrative is not to be trusted, audiences are addicted to a twist. They've been primed for a reality that can no longer be trusted, where facts are indistinguishable from fiction. Everyone has a hidden agenda. The moon landing was faked. Vaccination causes autism. The earth is flat. Interesting little connection there, right? Like I said, vaccines. No one here that I know of is really beating that vaccine drum right now. It's kind of like comes in phases. Like 6 months ago, everybody's like anti-vax, anti-vax. They're going to kill us all. Now nobody's talking about it. But even then I said, they're just trying to associate anti-vax with any kind of alternative takes on the news media so they can say that you're crazy and dangerous. And they've made that argument effectively. And they've also tried to demonize conspiracy theories as, if you're a conspiracy theorist, what you're promulgating is inherently dangerous in some way because you're getting people not to trust the experts. And so the ultimate in rejecting expertise would be the flat earther. Now look at this here. This is your CEO if you're using YouTube. I don't use YouTube. I mean, I kind of have it available there for those of you who are still weaning yourself off of it. But it would be a good idea to just leave it behind. In fact, it's going to be purging people in waves. I got hit with the same wave. I just got hit 2 days ago. And I don't really care. Very low quality audiences as far as like the trolls and stuff. You get a lot of great people, but then you get a lot of baggage. You get a lot of drama. And so the good minds are migrating. And I think it's okay. It's just like let the trolls burn with the whole ship. So this is Susan talking about how she's committed to censorship.
Releasing the site while keeping YouTube an open platform.
You can go too far, and that can become censorship. And so we have been working really hard to figure out what's the right way to balance responsibility with freedom of speech.
But the private sector is not legally beholden to the First Amendment. You're not operating under some freedom of speech mandate. You get to pick.
We do.
And that's one argument they can make. And look at Barbara Walter. She totally upgraded her face. So, look. They can say we're a private company who can do what we like. And you could make that argument. If YouTube wanted to become a Christian company, they could purge all non-Christian stuff. I mean, I guess, if you want to say they're private. But I don't think they're private. Knowing what we know about how the government has actually hijacked the media, or rather controls it, And knowing that YouTube favors mainstream media over independent content creators, I think we can make the case that far from being private, YouTube is in fact a fascist corporation. And being that it's a fascist corporation, the free speech thing, I mean, we can call them censors, even if they are so-called private.
But we think there's a lot of benefit from being able to hear from groups and underrepresented groups that otherwise we never would have heard from.
With name calling of Nazi or propagandists.
But that means hearing from people with odious messages about gays,
Mr. Let's Be Queer from Vox,
women,
Sex robot.
and immigrants.
I think the easiest way for Mexicans to not get shot and killed in Walmart is...
Wojcicki explained that...
Now that was an interesting piece there. So that little commenter, what he just said was, an easy way for Mexicans not to get shot in Walmart is not to jump the border. Okay, well, this guy, whether he knows it or not, is an auto-believing fool who automatically trusted what he heard on the news as real, and then he forms his bigoted opinion over it. But it shows you how he exists in the mediated reality where the event was real, and he bases his interpretation off of that. And so there's no way he could be in any way relevant or connected to reality. But he exists in the reality inhabited by 95% of the population, so they might be offended by what he said. To me, it doesn't even pertain to reality. But it does show you a lot about his character, sure.
He explained that videos are allowed as long as they don't cause harm, but her definition of harm can seem narrow.
So if you're saying don't hire somebody because of their race, that's discrimination. And so that would be an example of something that would be a violation against our policies.
Carrot Juice says, how was that bigoted? I guarantee you that you don't have the balls to call in. One thing I've noticed about the alt-right is that the alt-right people are willing to say inflammatory things, but most of them, like 99%, are too cowardly to voice those opinions. And now that I'm not beholden to YouTube's terms of service, you're welcome to call me and say whatever crap you want. So, voice your opinion. And I find it interesting that the white nationalists and the alt-right are very, very quiet. And now they don't have an excuse. You can't say you're being censored if you've gone off of these platforms and you're now operating somewhere where you're not beholden to their terms of service. My point is that the entire idea, this whole debate back and forth over open borders, closed borders, that is completely farcical. Most of the border violence you read about, the stuff with the cartels, is fake news. Most, if not all of it. Much of it is just fake, fake, fake. Okay, so listen to this. Let's go ahead and let Susan Wojcicki finish her statements about how she hates free speech, F America, and if you criticize climate change, you ought to be locked up. I'm just paraphrasing.
But if you just said white people are superior by itself, that's okay.
And nothing else, yes.
But that is harmful in that it gives white extremists a platform to indoctrinate.
We want a flourishing, healthy white race.
And what about medical quackery on the site, like turmeric can reverse cancer, bleach cures autism, vaccines cause autism?
You see, they have all these different...
The struggle for Wojcicki is
all these
policing
beliefs,
the site,
which they say justify censorship because these beliefs are harmful. And they're really trying to get to the point, where people are going to accept censorship for the sake of public health. All right, phones are open, 505-510-4226. It's open topics. This is the Mandela Apocalypse Eve. Richie from Boston has jumped on the Mandela Effect bandwagon. It's not a phenomenon that happens in the world. It's not being done physically with objects being changed or anything else. It's something that happens in the mind of the believer, much like people who talk to God. God doesn't sit down on a park bench. He doesn't send you an email. No, it's in your mind. And the Mandela effect is in the mind of the affected. And it's just, right now, it's an open question. Will they have the intellectual honesty to admit that they've been duped? That somebody set up a question, that the interrogator's bias framed a question and created a false memory. And it may be hard for some of them to let it go, because to them it's evidence that they're special, and they call everyone else who doesn't believe in it deniers and non-playing characters, which is just another way of saying that you're an infidel. Carrot Juice says, if you're not white, why would you take offense to a race wanting to remain a majority in their country? That's such a weird thing, too. That's just, to me, look, whenever you talk about racial solidarity, like whites need to, we need to have white babies and protect our homeland or whatever, you sound just as ridiculous as the feminists and any other political identity group or the LGBT crowd. Any of these groups, who just say, we matter as a collective. It's like, that's a big fat lie. I'd also like to know if you believe in reincarnation. Because when you buy into these race narratives, you're like, oh, well, the Jews did this, and you buy into it. If you believe in, the white genocide theory, then you believe that the Jews have been doing things, quote, historically. And then you believe that you can judge the present ones by the past. Just as white liberals and then others will say that, well, white people are guilty. White guilt. They need to basically pay for the past. Well, how do you know the people alive today were the same race previously? It'd be like you having to pay speeding tickets for the previous owner of your car and how they drove it. Like, it has nothing to do with you. But I think it's funny, though. Like, I can see it. You know what? The Bears, the whole alt-right thing, this MGTOW thing, it's just political identity groups and this male supremacy thing. It's just like, you guys are male lesbians at this point. They want you to stop being individuals. They want you to stop being perceivers, and they want you to join tribes. And they want you to start thinking about things like a racially pure future. That's just utopianism. It's no dumber than the Mars program or a green world order or any of these other collectivist workers' paradise, all these various schemes where they can perfect society. It's like, well, if only we had more of a racial consensus. So your argument for racial consensus is absurd. And I find something else in common. Not only do they never call in to espouse their views, Carrot Juice will not call in. He will not call in. He's most likely a government agitator, or he's a typical coward. If you're going to say these things that you know are un-PC, you can call and espouse your views. I want to hear them. And you have no excuse not to if you really believe this stuff. He says, to suggest there's something wrong with in-group preference is to deny reality. It depends on the group and what binds the group together. It really depends. And no, there's not anything wrong with it. Nobody's saying that specifically, but you're using it in a really interesting way, like almost like you're parroting Stefan Molyneux. Why would you do that? Of all people's thoughts to appropriate, Stefan Molyneux, one of the worst crisis actors out there. Okay, the first victim of the London Bridge terror attack. This is from Miles Mathis, because the guy's not going to call in. Look, Carrot Juice won't call in. I'm telling you, white nationalists do not make phone calls. They're a bunch of chicken shits. And look, I'm very vocal about what I believe, and I don't hate any specific group, but I will criticize organizations that I think are bigoted, like the ADL, and their statements that, oh, these hand signs are now hate symbols. Like, who are you to say that I can't make the AOK symbol? Who are you to put the bowl cut off limits to me? Because you say it's a hate symbol. Who are you to say I can't frown, or I can't use this number or that number? I don't really care for all the thought policing. But I remember this one guy. I could call him, but I don't want to hear him. I mean, he used to call and he'd say, I live in Ohio and everything sucks because everything's degenerate. The white people need to gang up and, build the white future. And I'm like, well, why don't you go to Europe? What are you doing in Ohio? Carrot Juice says, why do you hate white people? Why are you using a liberal social justice warrior argument? Which is, if you're not for the thing that I'm for, then you hate it and you're against it. That is such a childish argument. It's like, why do you hate Mother Earth? I don't hate Mother Earth. I just don't want to pay carbon taxes. Why do you hate America? I don't hate America. I just don't want to bomb Iraq or whatever. It's like, come on. Where are you coming from with your ridiculous arguments? You don't have the guts to call in. Carrot Juice gets the ban hammer. Sorry. Sorry for wasting time. I guess it's not a waste. I think that it's good to illustrate the point here because I can call these things, and I'm showing you that this is a pattern. I've noticed a pattern that white nationalists don't call. They make memes in the dark and they put them on obscure websites where they kind of fester. But they treat their own ideology like it's shameful pornography. Have you noticed? Every other identity group will go out there, they'll talk on YouTube, they'll tell you, thou shalt do this, how dare you that? And yet you get these people who say, oh yeah, we're being genocided. Well, speak up. Speak up for your race. Call in. Let us know what you really think. And I suspect a lot of them are just agents and chat trolls. If they were real, they would call. Look, he's not going to call. Now, phones are open. I'll type the number in here just in case there's the chance that he has... I don't know. We'll see. I don't think so. It's 505-510-4226. I'm at milesmathis.com, and he's doing an analysis of the story of the stabbing attack this previous week, this Black Friday. Okay, here we go. Picture 1 is Usman Khan now. Picture 2 is him from a decade ago. Now that's fascinating. It says here, did he put on some eyebrows in that time? Some eyebrowage. His eyebrows doubled in 11 years. I mean, look at those eyebrows. How did that happen? He says, let me see if I remember correctly. Didn't they already pull this event 2 years ago in 2017 when a guy armed with knives and wearing a fake suicide vest stabbed 8 people on the London Bridge? I didn't know this. So same bridge, a guy with knives and a suicide vest. I knew this sounded familiar. And that was during a general election. That's another point that I've been mentioning, that during the election year, we're going to see the right faking a lot of terror attacks and the left faking a lot of shootings. And this gives them a chance to bring up war on terror, national security, border security, immigration. It brings up all of these issues. It also gives the right a chance to point at the left and say, there you go, multi-culti liberals, look what you did. You know, it's funny how the right will call the left on that and say that's blowback, and the left will say, well, this is because of your intervention. So each side always has a way to scapegoat the other side. But during the election, exactly. So he says 8 people were killed at that time, and 3 bad guys were killed after the first emergency call. It says, strangely, 1 was Spanish, 1 was Canadian, 2 were Australian, and 3 were French. So the odds took a beating as well. The Muslim terrorists come to London and can't find any Englishmen to kill? Fascinating. Miles Mathis also says, someone please tell Boris Johnson about hair gel. Okay, it's a great piece. Miles Mathis, it's a short 5-page piece, breakdown. I didn't spend more than 30 seconds on it. We called it in advance. We said there's going to be a big psyop on Black Friday. It's going to be fake. It happened. Not a whole lot to do with it. You know, same with this last one. There was just another event we just covered. Oh yes, the shooting at the military base at the Pearl Harbor Naval Yard. Another hoax. Bad crisis acting, no witnesses. The witnesses were describing what their friends texted to them that they had experienced. So it's like, oh, we know there's a shooting here because somebody on Twitter tweeted that they heard a pop, pop, pop. and it was retweeted by somebody else who tweeted it to the news desk. Story developing. It's like, that's one way to not have to cite your sources, just pass the buck. Okay, so open calls for censorship, who cares? It's no longer a big deal. I'm not even interested in naming YouTube as a place to go, because they're going to I have a bunch of bots, IPS black wrench bots, which will be used to relay chats over there and bring people in, and they're all disposable, so I wouldn't get attached to it. I am building a permanent archive at BitChute and other places, and every night my bitchute.com account, it's bitchute.com/Infinite Plane Society, it auto updates every night. So all of the day's live streams will be over there at BitChute, and if you're on the Patreon list, you'll be notified. Life on Mars, they're preparing you for this. They're also preparing you for Earth-like conditions. Every time Mars makes the news, it's a little more like Earth. Now there's ice, now there's possibly life. And I see where they're heading. And also, and this is being discussed in the science fiction as well as in reality here, so-called reality, they're making the case that we cannot go to Mars with the intention of harvesting resources, and that's it. What we have to do is we have to go to Mars to live in harmony with nature. That's pretty much it. We have to go over there and basically become space communists. And it is space communism. And this is a perfect cover. So they can move you to your Mars dome that has very Earth-like conditions. But you're not going to be going back and forth, and they're not even going to advance in technology once you're there. They're probably going to terraform it for several generations, so you're going to be living in your little fiefdoms. And then when they open it up, they'll say, yep, you terraformed Mars, welcome to Mars, and you're living in Siberia, or Greenland, or wherever they put the Martians. It's like a modern-day Disneyland, but you go for life, and you don't know it's just a theme park. It's really brilliant, and is brought to you by, some, I guess, geniuses in movie magic. It's basically a new religion, is how I'm looking at this thing. Okay, so for anyone saying that the moon used to have a face and it doesn't now, and that's because it's a Mandela effect, what about the sun? The sun is depicted with the face as much as the moon is. It's always personified. Where do you draw the line here when people don't have rational criteria, where they don't have logic, where they don't provide evidence for their claims? So I might actually debate the Mandela effect guy. I wasn't going to do it, but I think I might actually have that talk. But I want to wait until after tomorrow. Because I'm wondering how they're going to walk this back. Are they going to say, well, it always existed? Because if it always existed, if reality's always changed, is it still only a distinctly American thing that affects people between the ages of like 30 and 50? Are there Mandela effectees who are in their teens? In their 20s? These are relevant questions. The movie comes out tomorrow, and we're going to find out. Because if there's anything to it that's real, if it's not just a bandwagon, you would expect that a whole lot of people will walk out of there shocked, like shell-shocked. Like they're going to walk out of that movie with their sense of reality totally upended. And what else would you expect? They're going to leave the place saying, okay, I am definitely not in the same reality that I was in. This is where it's at. It says the alt-right is headed here. Well, look, the alt-right doesn't go far enough. Not at all. In fact, they're in the mediated reality. They believe in all the false flags. They either think that the false flags... In fact, here's the thing. If you're on the alt-right, you think the London attack is real because you need to believe in Islamic terrorists. You need to justify your xenophobia. You need to justify your belief in white genocide. You're basically triggerable. If you're triggered by the news, you're probably taking sides. I don't really believe in any of the stuff. Like, I think it's all theater, and it's not to be trusted during a political season. Like, the one time to really just ignore the news is the run up to an election. This is why it's a great time to go to float.app. It's a great time to go to anywhere outside of the big channels where the political parties are going to be dumping billions of dollars into micro-targeting you with ads to get you to feel like you have to vote. Some of you they'll get with ideology, others they'll get with lesser of two evils, like, well, Hillary Clinton snorts ground up baby bones and drinks adrenochrome, so I'll vote for Trump. Like, if you're a lesser of two evil type of person, you're evil. You're still evil. Just because one is evil-er doesn't. And look, you're saying, okay, well, this guy's evil, but she's eviler. Well, you're saying that this person's evil now. What do you think he's going to do when he's put in a position of power? Why would you even do anything other than object? Serious question for those of you who think that NASA can be trusted. Do you believe that the Earth is going to be struck by a meteor? Because they're so precise in all of their measurements and all of their feats, landing probes, using kinetic projectiles to target meteors and knock them off course. Like, they're so precise with their miracles. What makes you think they could be wrong? And who are you to say? Lately, I've come to the conclusion that if you don't believe in climate change, you're a science denier. If you're a believer in everything else, as in, if you accept the dominant scientific paradigm with all of its pseudoscience and all of its hoaxing, its fake backstory, everything else, if you're fine believing in all of that, but then you don't believe in global warming, you're actually being inconsistent. If you accept the dominant paradigm, if you accept evolution, then you've got to accept global warming. Just like if you accept that you're on a spinning ball, you actually cannot deny evolution. It's all part of the package. Just looking for consistency. We see all these different beliefs or explanations that come up for things, and I'm not looking for alternative beliefs or explanations. I'm not here for conspiratainment, whatsoever. We're just recognizing that we do have a mainstream media that's not actually there for reporting news. It's actually there for constructing a false view of reality and shaping the values of society. And they use the space program, by and large, to advance environmentalism. Radical environmentalism. So people on the right who say climate change is a hoax, who recognize that it's just a plot to inculcate people with communist values and to get them to hate the free market, to hate capitalism, to hate progress. The progressives, they call themselves that, but they're really against progress in all its forms. They're totally regressive on this. So a lot of people, especially on the alt-right, are smart enough to see, well, obviously climate change is a hoax. It's become a way to put an end date on everything, like we're in the end times. So it gives a sense of urgency to its believers. It gives a sense of not only urgency, but moral high ground, because they're literally trying to save the world. So the bleeding heart liberals they've always been trying to save the world, just like all religions do. They've always been trying to save the world, but now they're literally trying to save it, and they believe that they are. And if you're trying to stop them, you're obstructing. So they want to silence those of you who are speaking out against climate change. And then you get people like Donald Trump who come along and they say, screw the Paris Accord, climate change is a hoax. And it sounds really good as a soundbite. But when you dig deeper, he's very much invested in the space program. And if you look at where the space program allocates its money and all of its, its entire agenda, it's actually an environmentalist agenda. from top to bottom. I mean, it's a brainwashing operation. The very reason why they had to show you the whole Earth was to tell you it's fragile and you're screwing it up and we got to save it. To get you to conceive of saving the world, they had to show it to you in a way that, okay, this thing needs to be saved. It's fragile was the word they introduced. So my point is that even if you're on the far right and you say climate change is a hoax, as long as you're supporting Space Force and NASA, which is a branch of the military, as long as you're supporting any of this, you're pretty much just as bad as the climate change alarmists. You're advancing the same agenda, which ultimately is an attack on private property, including yourself. I mean, it's to turn you into a slave. You're paying taxes on the air that you breathe. I mean, that's quite an achievement. They figured that out. They've replaced sin, an original sin. They've given you a carbon footprint, and they've definitely given God a facelift that even the atheists can fear. And I saw a couple of studies. One of them said something like 42% of millennials are copacetic with communism, and then another 80% believe the world's going to end in 10 years. So the idea that there was going to be this economic collapse, that was something that commies used to push. Like, we got to break the system. It's going to break anyway. Let's open borders so we can blow up the size of the welfare state, overload the system, and bring about this collapse so we can have equality. Like, this whole dialectic of rich versus poor, the 99% need to get the wealth from the 1%. They felt justified in attacking the capitalist system because they got to bring it down. Like, this has been a long time thing where there's been this constant agitation from the political left. This constant agitation that, look, if we don't change capitalism, there's going to be an economic collapse and it'll put us into a depression. Well, now instead of talking about economic collapses and depression, now they're talking about, no, actually, your economic model, capitalism, is going to bring about environmental collapse. And they're even rebranding global warming and climate change to global meltdown. They want to use meltdown because the word is associated with nuclear meltdowns. They're trying to make it scarier. They're open about it. They say, how can we scare people about this stuff? How can we make it more terrifying? How can we cause people to lose sleep? And remember what Greta said, and this was, of course, scripted for her. She said, I want you to panic. She said, I want you grown-ups to feel what we feel. We want you to be insecure. We want you to die. It was pretty dark, but... So anyway, they've replaced that idea of economic collapse with environmental collapse. I put a link below to milesmathis.com if you want to check out his breakdown on the London hoax. Somebody sent me a message about a dome, and they said that there's evidence for a dome and that the Earth is flat and that the dome is 13,000 feet high up in the Antarctic region. So I looked it up because the reference came from a 1958 encyclopedia, and it turns out that the dome references a landmass of a certain height. That's all, a certain elevation. It's not referring to a dome. People run with these things. It's interesting. All right, phones are open, 505-510-4226. Pretty much on anything, even if you want to debate the existence of the Mandela effect. Okay, just one moment. Let me get my ringer turned on. It's always slow on the first call, so if you just called, give it just a moment. Yeah, we always lose the first call of the night. It's been that way from day one. I figure the NSA's got to patch in. Okay, here we go. Call again. Okay, I believe it's going to answer this time. As you can hear, it's ringing, It says incoming. I've answered. So if it answers, just stay on the line. Okay, so hey caller, can you hear me okay? There's going to be about a 7 to 10 second delay. Man, are you guys calling from the ISS? Okay, so we may actually not be able to take calls tonight. I'm kind of looking at this situation here, and it looks like there's kind of a weird lag from the time that the phone starts ringing to the time that I hit the green button. So I apologize if you're trying to call. I'll give it a few more minutes, but if the browser does it, yeah, it's not going to work out. Okay, so hey, look, I'm not going to be able to take calls. I apologize. I will probably do it tomorrow. It looks like my computer is having some issues. Not trying to dodge anybody's calls. It's just the browser can't handle it.